Rolling around to the start of the first final. Track conditions remain fairly damp. After his Clay Pigeon win, Dan Butler pretty much conceded that he wasn't a championship title contender. That being the case, we're down to 5 in the chase for the title. Jamie Jenkins starts in 8th place, Brenton Miller on 13th, Kieran McCullough a lowly 17th, while up front Phil Ingram starts 5th, and as expected Sam Garford starts on the front row in pole position with Trevor Randall. Consistent qualifying heats from Anthony Teal gives him 3rd on the grid, ahead of Dan Butler. Chris Powell joins Phil Ingram on the 3rd row. Ben Yeomans joins Jamie Jenkins on the 4th, up to the line, picking up the revs, charging for turn 1, and it's Garford ahead of Teal. Randall slips back to 3rd behind Phil Ingram. Can he take it back mid-corner? Yes, he can. The long haul to Christmas corner. Kieran McCullough there trying to make ground as quickly as possible from 17th. Turning into Christmas corner, Garford, Teal. Randall finds himself on the outside and is squeezed off between 4 of the carts. And Brenton Miller's been tipped into a spin. Title contender, 2nd in the championship, Brenton Miller. That's a dent to his aspirations. Garford leads Ingram. Anthony Teal trying to hold off Ben Yeomans. At the back, Arvin Matakis has pushed Cowell onto the grass. McCullough inside Chris Bell for 12th. He's got a long way in. And Andy Cowell's returned to the circuit out of Zulu. Contrasting styles into the boot. Anthony Teal takes a different line and grabs 2nd and is going for the lead. Oh, and here comes Phil Ingram. Well, we've seen that a number of times today. The cart going last into the toe of the boot comes out first. It's a peculiar mix of grip, traction and momentum, and the downhill of course. And Anthony Teal's not finished with the lead. He's thrown it up the inside. With Phil Ingram and Butler, Jenkins and Yeomans are joined by Peter O'Connor. And Yeomans is going backwards. He's slaughtered by Wesley Godwin. And Chris Powell up the hill. Butler to the inside of Jamie Jenkins. That's for 4th place. Teal is determined to take the lead. And he has on the run down to Ashby. So Anthony Teal leads Phil Ingram and Sam Garford. They've broken clear of Dan Butler in 4th. Pete O'Connor trying to hang on to 5th place ahead of Jamie Jenkins and Wesley Godwin. Through the Parker corner, downhill now to Chapman's. Godwin inside of Jenkins. That's 6th place. Contact between Yeomans and Powell. Tricky corner Chapman's, and Arvin Atakis has fallen off at the rear. It's been a difficult return to Premier Class action for Evangelos Arvin Atakis. Anthony Teal and Phil Ingram have pulled out a couple of cart lengths on Sam Garford for now. Charging into turn 1, handful of lock from Anthony, turning in, taking the normal racing line. Is it the quick way in the conditions? Oh, and there's somebody parked there, and that's certainly got Anthony Teal's attention. He was sideways, crossed up coming out of turn 1. I didn't see a yellow flag either, and it seems to have cost him 2nd place to Sam Garford, who's managed to tip round the outside of the kink, and his momentum down the hill had him closing on Phil Ingram there. It's amazing how a small mistake results in a loss of momentum and a lot of time lost. Teal forced to defend into Parker from Dan Butler. Dan to the inside into Chapman's. He's got a different line to most drivers in that corner. Seems to be paying dividends though. Forced to go defensive into the boot and runs wide. Was he pushed? Camera angle doesn't help, but there's contact there, taking it back. And look at the momentum they've both lost. They'll fall back into the clutches of Wesley Godwin, Pete O'Connor and Jamie Jenkins if they're not careful. Sam Garford fights back. It's just a 10th, but he's closed in on Phil Ingram for the lead. Teal glued to Dan Butler's bumper going into turn 1. Losing ground on the exit. Let's check out Kieran McCullough's progress from 17th. He's just flashed past in 9th place there. Lister inside Powell for 10th. Can he hold it through the kink? Chris has got better momentum, but Jonathan's got track position. Now on the downslope down to Ashby. Tricky corner, off camber. Go over the curb and you're never coming back. Well, the midfield has settled down just a little bit. It was a busy opening 3 laps. Here's the battle for 9th. Kieran McCullough, Jonathan Lister, Chris Powell, Mark Lowcombe. McCullough takes a look over his shoulder. Here comes Jonathan Lister to the outside. That won't work, but it's opened the door for Chris Powell to go 9th. McCullough manages to keep it off the grass, but only just. And off camera, Wesley Godwin has passed Anthony Teal into the boot section, and now has Anthony on his bumper into turn 1. Anthony throws in a handful of lock and puts his foot down, and he's back through to 4th place. And Godwin's been so messed up he's lost out to O'Connor, and he might be struggling up the hill to stay ahead of Jamie Jenkins. Chris Powell in 9th, runs in a bit deep and will lose out to Kieran McCullough turning into the kink. No problem for Phil Ingram. He's pulled clear of Sam Garford, who's beginning to come under pressure from Dan Butler. Anthony Teal ahead of O'Connor, Godwin, Jamie Jenkins closing in, Yeomans, McCullough, Powell holding off Lister, Lowcombe and Chris Bell. Up to the boot section, Garford takes the wide line, Butler once again takes an unconventional line, searching for grip, as is Jamie Jenkins. Powell up the inside, the track looks fairly dry here, but I can assure you there's not a lot of grip. Kieran manages to keep it off the grass. Chris Powell coming at him into pit bend. Up front, 2nd place for Dan Butler. He's dived through on the inside of turn 1, ahead of Sam Garford. Kieran McCullough's managed to hold on to 9th place. Wesley Godwin inside of Pete O'Connor for 5th. Well, we're at half distance, so it's an opportunity to run through the order. Your leader, Phil Ingram, 3 seconds ahead of Dan Butler. Short gap to Sam Garford, and another 3-second gap to Anthony Teal, Wesley Godwin, Pete O'Connor, with Jamie Jenkins tagging along behind. In 7th place, ahead of Ben Yeomans, Kieran McCullough, Jonathan Lister in 10th, Chris Powell, Chris Bell, Mark Lowcombe is your top 12. Powell having a sniff at Jonathan Lister over 10th place. Lister in turn having a sniff at Kieran McCullough. Dan Butler sets the fastest lap, but he's only 0.03 of a second faster than leader Phil Ingram. He'll need a lot more than that if he means to close down 3.5 seconds over the remaining 4 laps. Here's the battle for 14th place. Darren Teal, Oliver Allwood. In places the track looks dry. Well, let me tell you, the track is still very wet. There might not be spray, but there's very little grip. And in the background there, Wesley Godwin was engaged with Anthony Teal in the fight for 4th. Here they are, up to Parker, all crossed up and sideways, sawing at the wheel Anthony Teal. But he's got 4th place for now. Pete O'Connor, Jamie Jenkins coming across to join them. Anthony looking for Wesley, who's got to run into the boot. He's trying to go through, there was contact there. Anthony tried to close the door, Wesley looks quicker and is getting frustrated. But you've got to pass cleanly. And behind them, we saw Jamie Jenkins overtake Pete O'Connor into the boot. He's gone 6th. And he's through to 5th. He takes the narrow line. Can he keep the momentum up? He can't, but he's got track position. And a yellow flag out at Christmas will hold the position for him. Andy Cowell off once again, another one of his favourite corners, Christmas corner. Downhill, on the brakes into Ashby. Remember, it's off camber, it's very wet, it's new tarmac. Yeomans and McCullough. McCullough basically waved by there by Ben Yeomans for 8th. Acknowledged by Kieran. Bit of team play from Essex TT Endurance teammates. Kieran started this race 3rd in the championship. He's just taken out the cone there. You better hope that wasn't seen. Ben Yeomans down in 11th. Well, his selfless act has cost him 9th place as well as Jonathan Lister goes through. Penultimate lap for Phil Ingram. Well under control, driving within himself. Looked like Dan Butler was on his limit behind. Here's the battle for 4th once again. Teal ahead of Jenkins, Wesley Godwin, Pete O'Connor. The fight for 8th. Kieran McCullough ahead of Jonathan Lister, Chris Powell, who's passed Ben Yeomans as well. Top of the hill, Lister had to think about a dive up the inside. But McCullough's gone a long way in on the brakes. It'd be a brave man to try and outbrake Kieran McCullough. Let's see how his championship rival's getting on. Jamie Jenkins running 5th. Trying to hold off Wesley Godwin. Kieran still pushing hard. One more position, who knows, it might make all the difference at Rye House in the final round. Trying to find a way past Pete O'Connor. He took a different line into the boot section. Will it pay off? He's definitely trying. Final lap for Phil Ingram and the field. Kieran sideways out of pit bend. Jamie looking to the outside of Anthony Teal. It's a brave man who wants to do that at this point. Last lap of the final. Up the hill, Jamie goes defensive to hold off Wesley Godwin, who's had a quiet day so far. Kieran to the inside of Pete O'Connor. That's for 7th place. Bit of contact. Oh, and Godwin's gone off. We didn't see it. Did he go on his own or was he pushed? Well, there's Jamie Jenkins, and McCullough's gone past Anthony Teal. There was a bit of contact at the end of that. McCullough's off. Oh dear, Kieran McCullough. Where are you going to come back on? And there's more going on behind. Chris Powell pushed to the grass by Ben Yeomans and Pete O'Connor. But it looks like Ben's come alive. And look at Kieran McCullough. He's desperate to get his car back to the circuit and going. Well, I don't think it's going to make any difference, Kieran. The damage is done. Phil Ingram wins.